The alarm beeped 3 times. Captain Cole looked up from his cold coffee and stared at the screen. A life sign. Faint, but real. Something was alive in all that floating metal and death. "Captain, we should ignore it," said his first mate. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. "That's wreckage. Their people don't like us poking around their business." Knew she was right. They were an old species. They ruled 12 star systems and considered humans to be little better than clever animals. They tolerated humanity the way a person tolerates flies at a picnic. Not worth killing, but certainly not worth respecting. But that life sign kept blinking. "Someone's alive in there," said. Someone replied, "They have their own rescue ships. Let them handle it." Looked at the debris field through the main window. Twisted metal, broken ships, bodies floating in the cold darkness of space. This had been a convoy once. Now it was a graveyard, and somewhere in that graveyard someone was still breathing. "How long until their rescue ships get here?" he asked. Checked her console. 6 hours, maybe 7. "And how long does that life sign have?" Was quiet for a moment. "Maybe 2 hours, maybe less." Stood up. "Then we're not waiting." The Wandering Mule was not a pretty ship. It was old, patched together with parts from a dozen different vessels, and it smelled like engine grease and recycled air. But it was fast, and it was tough, and had kept it flying for 15 years through stubbornness alone. He guided the ship through the debris field carefully. Pieces of destroyed vessels bounced off the hull. Warning lights flashed, muttered curses under her breath, but kept going, following that faint blinking dot on his screen. The signal came from what was left of a luxury vessel, royal transport by the look of it. Most of it was gone, torn apart by whatever weapons had hit it, but one section remained intact. A small compartment sealed tight with something alive inside. Put on his suit and went outside. Space was cold and silent. He used small jets to push himself toward the wreckage, carrying cutting tools on his belt. When he reached the sealed compartment, he could see through a small window. It was dark inside, but something moved. He started cutting. It took 20 minutes to make a hole big enough to climb through. His suit's lights showed him what was inside. Bodies, 4 of them. Guards in broken armor, their strange insect-like faces frozen in death. And in the corner, pressed against the wall, was a young female. She was small for her skin was pale blue, almost silver, and her large eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Those glowing eyes were the mark of nobility. Didn't know much about their society, but he knew that much. This girl was someone important. She was also terrified. "Hey," said, keeping his voice soft. "It's okay, I'm here to help." She stared at him. He could see she was injured. One of her arms hung at a bad angle and dark blood stained her clothing. She was shaking. "Human," she whispered. Her voice was weak but clear. She spoke common, the trade language that most species used. "You are human." "That's right, my name is, I have a ship. I can get you out of here." She looked at the bodies around her. The guards who had died protecting her. Her eyes filled with something that might have been tears, though wasn't sure if could cry. "They are all dead," she said. "Everyone is dead." "I know, I'm sorry, but you're not dead, and I'd like to keep it that way. Can you move?" She tried to stand and failed. Her legs wouldn't hold her, moved closer and knelt beside her. Up close, he could see how young she was. A child, really. A child who had just watched everyone she knew die. "I'm going to carry you," he said. "Is that okay?" She hesitated. Didn't like to be touched by other species. It was considered shameful, degrading. But she was hurt and scared and alone, and was the only living thing in all this death. She nodded. He picked her up as gently as he could. She weighed almost nothing. Her body was warm against his suit, and he could feel her shaking. He carried her through the hole he had cut, out into space and back to his ship. Was waiting at the airlock. Her eyes went wide when she saw what was carrying. "Captain, that's a noble, that's." "She's hurt," said, "help me." They brought her to the medical bay. It wasn't much. The Wandering Mule was a salvage ship, not a hospital, but had basic medical supplies, and he had learned a lot about treating injuries over the years. He set her broken arm as best he could. He cleaned her wounds. He gave her water and food. She watched him the whole time with those glowing eyes. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why help me?" Shrugged. "You needed help, I was here." Seemed simple enough. "But I am your species and mine. We are not friends. You're also a kid who almost died. That matters more." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My name is." "Nice to meet you. Try to get some rest. We'll figure out how to get you home." She closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. The stress and the injuries had taken everything out of her. Stood watching her for a while. Then he went back to the bridge where was waiting. "You know there's going to be trouble," said. "They will come looking for her. They'll find out a human ship was in the area. They'll assume the worst." "Probably. And you don't care." Looked out at the stars. She was alone in the dark, surrounded by dead people waiting to die. What was I supposed to do? Leave her there? Had no answer for that. Somewhere in space, Queen Ara the Eternal received the news. Her youngest daughter was missing. The convoy had been destroyed. There were no survivors. The Queen's face showed nothing. She had ruled for 300 years. She had learned to hide her feelings long ago, but inside, something cold and terrible was growing. "Find her," she commanded. "Find whoever did this. And if my daughter is dead, make them wish they had never been born." Her warriors bowed and departed. The hunt had begun. 3 weeks passed, grew stronger every day. Had expected her to be quiet and distant. She was nobility after all. Her people looked down on humans, but was not what he expected. She was curious. She asked questions about everything. "What is this?" she asked one morning, pointing at the cup in his hand. "Coffee." "What does it do?" "Keeps me awake, makes me feel human." He smiled. "Want to try some?" She took a small sip, her face twisted in disgust. "This is terrible. It tastes like burned dirt." That's the best description of coffee I've ever heard. But the next morning she asked for another cup, and the morning after that. By the end of the week, she was drinking it every day. "I still think it tastes bad," she admitted, "but I cannot stop drinking it. Is this what addiction feels like?" Laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in weeks. She asked about human music next. On her world, music was formal. It was performed at ceremonies and important events. It had rules and structures that could not be broken. When played her a simple song from his collection, she sat very still. "You sing about love," she said, "about loss, about simple things like rain and sunshine." "Sure, music is how we express feelings. But anyone can hear it. Anyone can sing it. There are no rules about who is allowed." "That's the point." She thought about this for a long time. That night, heard her humming to herself in her quarters. The sound was strange and beautiful, and it made him smile. But not everything was peaceful. They were hunting, picked up reports from every station they passed. Queen Ara had sent her, the most feared warriors in her empire. They were asking questions everywhere, looking for any ship that had been near the debris field, looking for any sign of the missing princess. And they were getting closer. "We need to think about this carefully," said one night. They were in the cargo bay, speaking quietly so wouldn't hear. "The bounty on information about her is huge. We could name our price." Looked at her. "You want to sell her?" "I want us to survive. They doesn't ask questions, they kill first and investigate later. If they catch us with her, they'll assume we kidnapped her. They'll execute us all. So we should sell her instead, trade her to whoever attacked her convoy. Let them finish what they started." Looked away. "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know, I don't want to die for someone I don't even know." "Understood." He really did, had been with him for 10 years. She had saved his life more times than he could count. She had every right to be scared. "She's a kid," he said softly. "She watched everyone she knew die. She's alone and scared, and she trusted me to help her. I'm not going to betray that trust, not for money, not for anything." Neither of them knew that was standing in the shadows nearby. She heard every word. She returned to her quarters silently, and she lay awake for a long time, thinking about what it meant that this human would risk his life for her. 2 days later, they found them. They came out of nowhere. 3 ships, fast and deadly, appearing from behind an asteroid. Barely had time to react before weapons fire lit up the darkness around them. "Hold on," he shouted. The wandering mule was not built for combat. It was old and slow and held together with hope and spare parts, but knew every inch of this ship. He knew exactly what it could do, and he knew something else. He knew how to fly. He dove into the asteroid field. "Are you crazy?" screamed. "No one flies through there, the rocks are too dense. They won't follow, they're too careful, too logical, they'll go around. And if we hit something, then we hit something." The asteroids were everywhere. Giant rocks spinning in the darkness, crashing into each other, creating clouds of smaller debris. Any sane pilot would never enter such a place. The calculations alone would take hours. Didn't calculate. He flew by instinct, by feeling, by the strange human gift of knowing what to do without knowing why. He spun the ship left, then right, then up, then down. Asteroids passed so close that could have reached out and touched them. Came to the bridge. She held onto a rail and watched with wide eyes. "This is impossible," she whispered. "No one can fly like this." "Tell that to Captain," said through gritted teeth. A massive asteroid loomed ahead. There was no way around it, no way over it, but there was a gap, a tiny space between 2 rocks that were slowly moving apart, aimed for it. "We won't fit," said. "We'll fit. We'll fit." They fit, barely. The hull scraped against rock and warning lights screamed, but they made it through. And then they were out the other side and was behind them, unable to follow. Let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. "See," he said, "easy." Stared at him. In her entire life she had never seen anything like what she had just witnessed. Her people were careful. They planned everything. They never took risks they hadn't calculated. But this human had thrown himself into certain death and come out the other side laughing. "You are insane," she said. "Probably. My people will never stop hunting. They will find us eventually." Turned to look at her. His face was tired but determined. "Then we won't run anymore. We'll take you home ourselves, right to your mother's doorstep." "You cannot be serious. If you enter space, they will capture you. They will think you kidnapped me. My mother will have you killed. Then I'll explain what really happened." "She won't believe you." Smiled. It was a strange smile, full of something didn't understand. Something that looked like hope mixed with stubbornness. "Then I'll make her believe," he said. "One way or another, I'm getting you home safe. That's a promise." Wanted to argue. She wanted to explain all the ways this plan would fail. But looking at his face, she realized something strange. She believed him. Against all logic, against everything she knew about humans and her own people. She believed that this one strange, stubborn man would find a way to do the impossible. And for the first time since the attack, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The moment they crossed into core space, the warships came. 12 of them, massive vessels that made the wandering mule look like a toy. They surrounded its ship completely. There was no escape. There was no hope of running. They were caught. "Human vessel," a cold voice spoke through the communication system. "You will power down your engines. You will not resist. Any attempt to flee will result in your immediate destruction." Did as he was told. What choice did he have? Stood beside him on the bridge. Her face was pale. I need to speak with them. I need to tell them who I am. Go ahead. She activated the communicator. This is daughter of Queen Ara the Eternal. I am alive. I am unharmed. This human rescued me from the wreckage of my convoy. He has protected me. He is not an enemy. There was a long silence. Then the voice returned, even colder than before. Princess, identification codes have been revoked. Standard procedure for missing royalty presumed compromised. You will be brought to the capital for verification. No further communication is authorized. The line went dead. Turn 2, her eyes were full of fear. They don't believe me. They think I've been turned somehow, made to say things against my will. Have you? Of course not. Then we'll prove it when we get there. You don't understand. They won't give you a chance to prove anything. They'll take you away. They'll hurt you. They'll assume you're guilty until they have absolute proof you're not. Put a hand on her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it meant something. Hey, whatever happens, I don't regret helping you, okay? Not for a second. Felt tears forming in her eyes. She had only known this human for a few weeks, but he had shown her more kindness than she had ever expected from anyone outside her own family. The trip to Ara Prime took 2 days. 2 days of flying in silence, surrounded by warships. 2 days of waiting for whatever came next. When they finally arrived, gasped. She had been away from home for less than a month, but seeing it now, through the eyes of someone who had almost died, everything looked different. The planet was beautiful. Crystalline spires rose from the surface, catching the light of 3 suns. Gardens stretched for miles, filled with plants that had been engineered over thousands of years to be perfect. Cities floated on clouds. It's amazing, said softly. It's home, replied, but her voice was sad. She knew what was waiting for them down there. They landed in the shadow of the Eternal Palace. Guards met them at the ship. They were tall and armored and carried weapons that could kill a human in an instant. Tried to stay with, but they pulled her away. Take him to the Inquisitors, one guard commanded. No, screamed. He saved my life, you can't. Princess, your mother wishes to see you. This human will be questioned. If he is innocent, he will be released. They dragged her away, watched her go. He didn't struggle, he didn't fight. What would be the point? The Inquisitors were worse than anything had imagined. They took him deep beneath the palace to a room made of black stone. Strange machines lined the walls. The air smelled like metal and fear. 3 stood waiting for him. Their eyes were empty. Their faces showed nothing. Human, one of them said, you will answer our questions. You will tell us the truth. If you lie, we will know, and you will suffer. Stood straight. I have nothing to hide. Ask whatever you want. They asked. For 6 hours they asked. They wanted to know where he found. He told them. They wanted to know if he was working with the attackers. He said no. They wanted to know why he hadn't ransomed her. He said it never occurred to him. They didn't believe him, so they used other methods. Pain came first, sharp and burning and endless, screamed, but he didn't change his answers. There was nothing to change. He was telling the truth. Then came the mental intrusion. The Inquisitors had abilities that humans didn't understand. They could reach into a mind and pull out secrets. They could find lies hidden in the deepest parts of memory. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. For 6 hours they tortured him, and for 6 hours Cole gave the same answers. I found a hurt kid, I helped her, I brought her home, that's it. The Inquisitors were troubled. They had broken criminals, spies, and warriors from a dozen species. They had never encountered anything like this human. His mind was simple. His motivations were pure. There was no hidden agenda, no secret plan, no deception. He had simply helped because he could. Just as they were about to begin again, the door exploded inward. Stood there breathing hard. Behind her were unconscious guards knocked down by her own hands. Her eyes blazed with fury. Stop, she screamed. Stop this now. The Inquisitors turned toward her. "Princess, you should not be here." "I don't care what I should be. You're torturing an innocent man. He saved my life, and this is how you repay him." "We must be certain." "I am certain. I spent 3 weeks with him. I know who he is. He's good and kind and brave, and you're hurting him because you're too afraid to believe that a human could do something decent." A new voice spoke from behind her, cold, ancient, powerful. "Enough." Everyone turned. Queen Ara the Eternal stood in the doorway. She was tall even for and her presence filled the room. Her eyes were the same glowing silver as her daughter's, but older, wiser, more dangerous. She walked forward slowly. Her gaze moved from her daughter to the Inquisitors too, who hung in his chains, bloody and barely conscious. "My queen," one Inquisitor said, "we were merely—" "I know what you were doing. I have been watching." She gestured to a hidden point in the ceiling. "I have seen everything." She stopped in front of. He raised his head with difficulty and met her eyes. Even after 6 hours of torture, he didn't look away. "You watched," he said. His voice was rough with pain. "You watched them hurt me." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I needed to know the truth. I needed to see what kind of man you really are." She paused. "Now I know." She raised her hand. The Inquisitors stepped back. The chains released and fell to the floor. Ran to him and held him up. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Managed a weak smile. "Hey, I'm okay. I've had worse." He was lying. They both knew it. But it was such a human thing to say. Queen Ara watched them. Her daughter, Princess of the Dominion, holding a bloody human like he was the most precious thing in the universe. Something changed in her ancient eyes. "Bring him to the healing chambers," she commanded, "and prepare the grand throne chamber. There will be a formal judgment." "My queen," an Inquisitor asked, "what judgment?" Ara looked at Cole one more time. He had passed her test. He had endured everything her people could do to him, and he had never wavered. He had never lied. He had never blamed anyone. He had simply told the truth and accepted whatever came. "A judgment," she said, "that will change everything." The Grand Throne Chamber was the largest room had ever seen. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. The floor was made of something that looked like liquid glass, and it reflected everything like a mirror. Thousands filled the hall, nobles in shining robes, generals in battle armor, diplomats from every world in the Dominion. They had come to see the human who had dared to enter their space. They had come to see him punished. Stood alone in the center of the chamber. The healers had fixed his wounds, but his body still ached from what the Inquisitors had done. He wore his old clothes, still stained with blood and grease. He had refused anything else. This was who he was. He would not pretend otherwise. The whispers surrounded him like a tide. "Look at him, so small, so weak. They say he claims to have saved the princess. A likely story. Humans cannot be trusted. Everyone knows this." Ignored them. He stood straight and kept his eyes forward. At the end of the chamber, on a throne made of starlight, sat Queen Ara the Eternal. She was magnificent. Her robes flowed around her like living shadows. Her crown was a ring of silver that floated above her head. Her eyes glowed with 3 centuries of power and wisdom. "Human," she spoke, and her voice filled every corner of the vast room. "You stand before the throne of the Dominion. You are accused of entering our space without permission. You are accused of holding the royal princess for 3 weeks. You are accused of crimes against our people." The crowd murmured in approval. This was how it was supposed to go. The human would be found guilty. The human would be executed. Order would be restored. "Before judgment is passed," the queen continued, "do you have anything to say?" Looked at her for a long moment, then he spoke. "I have nothing to defend. I found your daughter alone in a wrecked ship, surrounded by dead guards waiting to die. I brought her aboard my ship because she needed help. I treated her wounds because she was hurt. I took care of her because she was scared and sad and far from home. And I brought her back to you because that's where she belongs." He paused. "If that's a crime, then yes, I'm guilty." The crowd erupted in angry voices. How dare this human speak so boldly? How dare he show no fear? But the queen raised her hand, and silence fell instantly. "Bring forward the princess." Walked through the crowd. She was dressed in royal clothing now, but her eyes still showed the pain of everything she had been through. She stopped beside and turned to face her mother. "Daughter," the queen said, "tell us what happened." Took a deep breath, then she began to speak. She told them everything. She told them about the attack, the explosions, the screams, the guards who died trying to protect her. She told them about the cold darkness of space, about being trapped in that tiny compartment, about watching her oxygen slowly run out. "I thought I was going to die," she said. "I had accepted it. I was alone and no one was coming, and I was going to die in the dark like everyone else." Her voice shook, but she continued. "Then he came, this human. He cut through the wreckage with his bare hands. He carried me to his ship. He treated my wounds with supplies that weren't made for my species. He stayed awake for 3 days straight making sure I would survive." The crowd was silent now. Even the most hostile nobles were listening. "He could have left me there. It would have been the smart thing to do. It would have been the safe thing to do. Our people hate his kind. He knew that. He knew that helping me would bring him nothing but trouble." She turned to look at, her eyes were shining. "But he helped me anyway, not because he wanted money, not because he wanted power, not because he wanted anything. He helped me because I was a child who needed help. That was all." She turned back to her mother. "I spent 3 weeks with this man, Mother. I watched him. I learned about him. I saw who he truly is. He is not our enemy. He is the only reason I am standing here today." His voice rang through the chamber. "He rescued me, Mother." The words echoed in the silence. Queen Ara rose from her throne. She descended the stairs slowly, her robes trailing behind her. The crowd parted as she walked. She stopped in front of. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. Met her gaze. He didn't bow, he didn't kneel. He simply stood there, tired and hurt and human. "Your species," the queen said slowly, "has always been a mystery to us. You are so young, so chaotic. You fight among yourselves constantly. You have none of our discipline, none of our structure, none of our wisdom." She paused. "We looked at you and saw nothing worth respecting. We assumed you were selfish and primitive. We believed you would never do anything that did not benefit yourselves." She reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were cool against his skin. "We were wrong." The crowd gasped. No one had ever heard the queen admit to being wrong, not once in 300 years. "You saved my daughter," she said. "You risked your life for a child of a species that despised you. You asked for nothing in return. You endured our torture without complaint because you had nothing to hide." She lowered her hand. "There is no payment for such a debt. There is no treasure great enough, no honor high enough. You have given me back my child. I cannot repay that." She turned to the crowd. "Let it be known throughout the Dominion. This human, Cole, is hereby declared a friend of the. He is under our protection. Any who harm him will answer to me personally." The crowd was stunned. No human had ever received such an honor. No human had ever been considered worthy. But the queen was not finished. "There is still the matter of who attacked my daughter's convoy," she said. "Someone wanted her dead. Someone arranged the destruction of 50 ships and the murder of hundreds of loyal." Her voice grew cold. "I want to know who." Stepped forward. "I might have some information about that." Everyone turned to look at him. "The attack was too organized to be random pirates," he said. "The weapons used were military grade, and they specifically targeted the section of the convoy where was traveling. Someone knew exactly where she would be." The queen's eyes narrowed. You believe there is a traitor. I believe whoever did this wanted to start a war. Kill your daughter, blame it on humans, and watch our species tear each other apart. Silence filled the chamber. The implications were terrifying. If you're right, the Queen said slowly, then we have a common enemy. We do. Queen Ara looked at Cole, a human, a salvage captain, a man who smelled like engine grease and cheap coffee. And she made a decision that would change the history of two civilizations. Then we will hunt them together, she said, human and side by side. She extended her hand, took it, and in that moment, in the grand throne chamber of Ara Prime, something impossible happened. Two species who had never trusted each other formed an alliance. All because one human had refused to leave a frightened child alone in the dark. 6 months had changed everything. Stood on the bridge of his new ship, watching the stars through windows made of something stronger than any human material. The vessel was a gift from Queen Ara, a light cruiser redesigned for human hands. It was fast and deadly and beautiful. He had named it the Second Chance. His crew had grown, was still with him, though she never stopped complaining about how strange everything had become. There were also warriors aboard now. They followed orders from a human captain, which had been unthinkable 6 months ago. Cultural clashes happened daily. The found human informality shocking. The humans found formality exhausting. But slowly, painfully, they learned to work together. The investigation had taken months, tracking down the attackers, following hidden trails of money and weapons, questioning sources across a dozen star systems. What they found was worse than anyone had expected. A coalition, younger species who feared what might happen if humans and became allies. They had calculated that killing would spark a war between the two powers. Both sides would weaken, both sides would suffer, and the coalition would grow stronger in the chaos. They had been clever, they had been careful. But they had not counted on Cole. Now the coalition's location was known, a hidden base in an unnamed system, far from any trade route. That was where the final battle would happen. Stood beside on the bridge. She had changed in 6 months. She was taller now, more confident. The Queen had named her official heir to the throne, and she took her duties seriously. But she still came to the Second Chance whenever she could. My human, she said. It was what she always called him now. Kid, he replied. It was what he always called her. The court was scandalized by their relationship. A princess should not have such familiarity with an alien, but neither of them cared. What they had been through together was beyond what polite society could understand. Are you ready? She asked. Always. The coalition has prepared their defenses carefully. They know tactics. They know our ships, our weapons, our strategies. They have planned for everything we might do. Smiled. They've planned for what they might do. They haven't planned for what humans might do. What's the difference? You'll see. The fleet jumped into the enemy system, 50 warships and 5 human vessels. The coalition was waiting for them. Their defenses were impressive. Shield stations, weapons platforms, automated drones, everything placed perfectly to counter-attack patterns. The admiral gave orders. The fleet moved forward in standard formation. The battle began. But while the main fleet engaged the enemy's attention, and the Second Chance slipped away. Where are we going? Asked. See that gap in their defense grid, the one between the third shield station and the asteroid field. That's not a gap. That's a death trap. Any ship that enters there will be caught in crossfire from 3 different platforms. Exactly, which is why no ship would ever try it. He pushed the engines to full power. The coalition's strategists had built their defenses based on logic. They knew they were careful. They knew the calculated risk and reward before every action. They knew they would never attempt something suicidal. They didn't understand humans. The Second Chance dove into the death trap. Weapons fire came from everywhere. The shields screamed warnings. The hull groaned under the stress. Was shouting, the crew members were praying to gods had never heard of, and alarms were going off throughout the ship. Flew. He flew like he had through the asteroid field 6 months ago. By instinct, by feeling, by the human gift of refusing to accept that something was impossible. He spun and rolled and dove, slipping through gaps that shouldn't exist, avoiding shots by inches. And then they were through. Behind enemy lines, behind all their careful defenses, with a clear shot at the main station. Fire everything, said. They fired everything. The main station exploded. Without it, the defense grid collapsed. The coalition's carefully planned formation fell apart. The fleet swept in and finished the job. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the coalition leader was captured and brought before. He was a strange creature, with too many eyes and not enough understanding of what had just happened. How, he demanded. How did you break through our defenses? We planned for everything. We calculated every possibility. Looked at him calmly. You planned for logic. You planned for self-preservation. You planned for species that think about acceptable losses before they act. He leaned closer. Humans don't work like that. We don't accept that something is impossible. We don't calculate acceptable losses. We just do what needs to be done and figure out how to survive afterward. The coalition leader stared at him. In his many eyes there was finally understanding and fear. The war was over. A formal alliance between humanity and the Dominion was signed 3 weeks later. Ambassadors would be exchanged. Trade would flow. Cooperation would begin. It was a new era for both species. Stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking at the stars of space. So much had changed since that day when he had followed a faint life sign into a field of wreckage. Found him there. My mother wishes to know something, she said. What? She wants you to become humanity's official liaison to the Dominion, a permanent position, a real title. Laughed. Me, a diplomat. I'm a salvage captain. I smell like engine grease and bad coffee. She believes you are exactly what diplomacy needs. Someone who does the right thing without calculating whether it helps them. Someone who sees people instead of species. She paused. I believe she is correct. Looked at the stars for a long time. Out there somewhere humanity was spreading. Messy, chaotic, stubborn humanity. Building and breaking and building again. Making mistakes and fixing them. Fighting and loving and dreaming. His people, his species, for all their flaws, they had something precious. Something that other species didn't quite understand. They helped because they could. They risked because it was right. They refused to give up because giving up was not in their nature. Tell your mother I'll think about it, said. Smiled. She knew him well enough to know what that meant. Thank you, she said softly, for everything, for saving me, for changing everything. Put his arm around her shoulders. She was so different from the scared child he had found in that wreckage. She would be a great queen someday, maybe the greatest her people had ever known. Hey, he said, what are humans for? They stood together, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the universe waited. It was full of danger and wonder and possibilities beyond counting. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight, more impossible things to attempt. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. A human and two species who had learned to see each other clearly, two people who had become family. And all because, 6 months ago, a salvage captain had refused to leave a frightened child alone in the dark. That was the thing about humans. They did impossible things for simple reasons. They crossed galaxies for strangers. They stood against armies for friends. They changed the universe one act of kindness at a time. And the universe was better for it. The end.